Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep, really deep, into transcranial magnetic stimulation.
TMS.
TMS, right?
Mm?
And how it's being used to treat depression.
Exciting stuff.
It really is. Our main source for this deep dive is, and get ready for this, Serio. Fukumelino.
Which translates to
Brain stimulation therapy. Advances in TMS and depression treatment. Quite a mouthful, right?
definitely.
So we'll be exploring how this non-invasive technique actually works, how it compares to other treatment options, and the potential for personalized TMS therapy.
Yeah, that's what has me really excited.
Me too. It feels so futuristic.
It really does.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's make sure we're all on the same page about just the basics of TMS.
Sure. So TMS uses magnetic pulses to stimulate specific areas of the brain, and those pulses...
They're focused, right?
Right, very focused. They generate electrical currents, and these currents, they change how the neurons are working, how they're talking to each other.
Just like giving those brain circuits a little nudge?
Yeah, like a gentle nudge in the right direction.
That makes sense. But I'm curious, how did anyone even figure out that magnets could be used to treat depression? What's the story there?
Well, early research, way back in the 1980s, they showed that TMS could stimulate the motor cortex.
That's the part that controls movement.
Exactly. They actually made people's fingers twitch using these magnetic pulses.
So from twitching fingers to treating depression. Quite a journey.
It is. Later research found that the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, we call it the DLPFC.
Try saying that 3 times fast.
I know, right? Anyway, the DLPFC, it's often underactive in people with depression.
And the DLPFC, what does it do?
It plays a big role in like executive function, mood regulation, emotional processing, that sort of thing.
So if it's underactive, TMS can maybe boost it back up.
That's the idea. By targeting the DLPFC, TMS aims to sort of re-energize those neural pathways and hopefully make some lasting changes, like rewiring the brain.
Rewiring the brain, that sounds almost like science fiction.
I know. It's amazing, right? It's called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt.
So we might be able to use this natural ability to treat depression.
Exactly. But, TMS isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. Everyone's brain is different, so a standard TMS treatment might not be equally effective for everyone.
Like trying to fix every car with the same wrench.
Haha, yeah, good analogy. And that's where personalized TMS comes in.
Personalized TMS. Okay, now you're speaking my language.
So they use brain imaging, like fMRI, to create TMS treatments that are tailored to each person's brain.
So you get a brain scan, and then what?
Well, they use these sophisticated algorithms to analyze the scan, looking for little variations in your brain that might predict how you'll respond to TMS.
So we're talking about really pinpointing the treatment, not just stimulating the whole DLPFC.
Exactly. And the research is pretty amazing. There was a study at Stanford.
Stanford, they're always doing cutting-edge stuff.
Right. They used personalized TMS, targeting a very specific part of the DLPFC. They achieved a 79% remission rate after only 5 days of treatment.
Wow, 79% after 5 days. That's incredible.
It is. It's a huge improvement over traditional TMS, which can take weeks.
So what was it like for the people in the study?
One participant, his name was Tommy Van Brocklin, he described it as feeling like a woodpecker tapping on his head.
Not exactly relaxing, but if it works.
Right. And what's really exciting is that the FDA has cleared Dr. Williams's, he's the one who led the study, they cleared his personalized TMS method for wider use.
That's a big step.
It is. But of course, research is still ongoing. We still have a lot to learn about the long-term effects and how to refine these treatments.
That makes sense. Every new treatment has its own set of questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's still so much we don't know about TMS, like how much of the effect is placebo.
The placebo effect, it's always fascinating.
Yeah, so researchers are designing studies to try and separate the real effects from the placebo effects.
How do they do that?
Well, they often use what we call sham stimulation.
Sham stimulation.
It's basically like a placebo TMS. It makes the sounds and feels like TMS, but there are no magnetic pulses.
Clever.
Right. And by comparing people who got the real TMS to those who got the sham, they can figure out what TMS is really doing.
Wow, so much science going on behind the scenes.
There is. They're also working on optimizing the treatments, figuring out the best frequencies, the best shapes for the magnetic coils, even combining TMS with other therapies like psychotherapy.
So many possibilities. It's like fine-tuning a musical instrument.
Exactly. They're also looking at how TMS works in different groups of people, like teenagers, older adults.
So much research still to be done. But before we get into all that, I think it's important to compare TMS to the more traditional depression treatments. Like antidepressants or even ECT.
Good point. And to understand how we got here, we need to go way back, even further than the 1980s.
Further back. How far are we talking?
How about ancient Rome?
Ancient Rome. What does that have to do with TMS?
Well, believe it or not, Roman physicians used to use electric fish to treat headaches.
Electric fish? Seriously?
Yeah, they would apply live torpedo fish to people's heads.
Wow, that's a long way from the TMS machines we have today.
I know, right? But it shows how long people have been fascinated by using electricity to heal.
And that brings us to electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, which is still used today, right?
Yes, but it's usually for people with severe depression who haven't responded to other treatments.
ECT has a bit of a scary reputation.
It does. And for good reason, it can have some serious side effects, like memory loss.
Because it stimulates the whole brain.
Right. TMS is much more targeted. It just focuses on specific areas, so the side effects are usually much milder.
That's good to know. But how does it compare to ECT or antidepressants in terms of effectiveness?
Well, research shows that TMS is about as effective as antidepressants.
Meaning?
About 30 to 40% of people experience remission with either treatment.
Those numbers seem a bit low.
They do. And one of the big problems with antidepressants is that finding the right one can take a long time, and a lot of people have side effects.
TMS doesn't have those problems.
Not usually. It's non-invasive, so you don't have to worry about taking pills every day, and the side effects are generally milder.
So TMS has some real advantages.
It does. That's why it's becoming more and more popular as a treatment for depression.
This has been a really interesting overview. I feel like I'm starting to get a much better grasp on TMS and how it works.
I'm glad to hear that.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious about what you think about TMS and the future of mental health care.
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, think about it. If we can move away from just giving people medications and offer them this personalized, non-invasive treatment, it could really change everything.
Like a whole new era of mental health care.
It really is.
That's a question we'll definitely have to keep exploring.
Definitely. Yeah, it's really a question worth thinking about. I mean, imagine if we could get away from that whole trial and error thing with medications and offer people something more precise, personalized with fewer side effects.
It would be huge. Like a total game changer for mental health.
Absolutely. And what's really exciting is that we're not just treating the symptoms anymore. We're actually starting to understand, the brain itself, the underlying mechanisms of depression.
Speaking of those mechanisms, I'm curious about how TMS actually works on like a cellular level. What's happening to those neurons when they're stimulated by those magnetic pulses?
Well, we know that TMS changes how brain cells communicate, how they're firing.
But how?
The exact how is still, being researched. But one of the main theories involves something called long-term potentiation.
Long-term potentiation?
Or LTP.
You might have heard of it.
Yeah, rings a bell. It has something to do with strengthening the connections between neurons, right?
Exactly. LTP is really important for learning and memory. It basically makes the connections between neurons more efficient.
So TMS might be triggering LTP in those targeted areas of the brain, and that's what leads to those lasting changes. That's the idea. We're not just stimulating the neurons, we're actually strengthening the connections between them, rewiring the brain.
Neuroplasticity in action. It's amazing to think that we can actually harness this natural ability to treat mental illness.
It is amazing, but you have to remember the brain is incredibly complex.
Yeah, it's not just a bunch of neurons firing randomly.
Right, it's a whole network, all these different regions working together in these super intricate ways.
And researchers are looking at how TMS affects these networks.
Oh yeah, definitely. One of the networks they're studying is the default mode network. It's actually overactive in depression.
Wait, isn't that the network that's active when we're daydreaming or just lost in thought?
Yeah, exactly. And in depression, this overactivity can lead to rumination, dwelling on negative thoughts.
So TMS can actually quiet down this default mode network.
That's what the research suggests. It can help reduce those negative thought patterns that are, so common in depression.
It's not just about stimulating one area. It's about influencing these whole networks, bringing them back into balance.
Exactly. And that's just one network. They're also looking at the salience network.
Which does what?
The salience network helps us focus our attention, figure out what's important.
So that we don't get distracted by everything.
Right. And in depression, this network can be kind of dysfunctional, so people have trouble focusing, they get stuck on negative thoughts.
And TMS can help with that too.
The research is still ongoing, but it looks promising. It seems like TMS can actually modulate the activity of the salience network, improving attention and reducing those intrusive thoughts.
Wow, so TMS is doing so much more than just stimulating neurons. It's like it's conducting this whole orchestra of changes in the brain.
That's a great way to put it. It's this incredibly complex interplay of effects, and that's what makes TMS research so fascinating.
It's like we're just scratching the surface of what this technology can do.
Exactly. There are so many exciting new approaches being developed, like closed-loop TMS.
Closed-loop TMS.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Traditional TMS delivers the pulses at a set frequency, but closed-loop TMS actually adapts the stimulation based on what's happening in the brain in real time.
Hold on. It adapts.
They use EEG, that thing with the electrodes on your head, to monitor your brain waves during the TMS session.
Okay.
And then this sophisticated computer program analyzes your brainwave patterns and actually adjusts the TMS stimulation.
So it's constantly fine-tuning the treatment.
Exactly. It's like having a smart TMS system that can personalize the treatment on the fly.
That's incredible. It sounds like something out of like a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's real, and it has the potential to be even more effective than traditional TMS.
I can only imagine. But what are some of the, the hurdles, the challenges in developing these closed-loop systems?
Well, the brain is incredibly complex, so analyzing all that EEG data in real time and then using it to adjust the TMS, it's a huge computational challenge. And then there are the ethical considerations. Anytime you're dealing with technology that can directly influence brain activity.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
Right. So researchers and clinicians have to be very careful and make sure they're using this technology responsibly.
Of course, safety and ethics always have to come first.
Absolutely. And there are practical challenges, too. Closed-loop TMS systems, they're still pretty new, and they require specialized equipment and expertise, so they're not widely available yet.
It's not like I can just walk into my doctor's office and get a closed-loop TMS treatment.
Not yet, haha. But things are moving fast. As the technology improves and becomes more accessible, I think we'll see it being used more and more.
It's really exciting to see how far TMS has come from those early experiments with twitching fingers to these sophisticated personalized treatments.
It is, and we're learning more all the time.
Speaking of learning more, I'm curious about the research on the long-term effects of TMS. We've talked about those amazing remission rates after just a few days, but what happens after that? Do those benefits last?
That's the million-dollar question, and honestly, we need more research to answer it definitively. Most of the studies so far have only looked at the short-term effects, a few weeks or months after treatment.
So we don't really know how long those changes in the brain and mood will stick around.
Right. It's possible that the effects might wear off over time, just like with medications or therapy.
Makes sense. The brain is constantly changing, so it wouldn't be surprising if the effects of TMS weren't permanent.
Exactly. So people might need, booster sessions to keep the benefits going.
Booster sessions.
Yeah, like additional TMS sessions after the initial treatment.
And researchers are looking into that.
Oh, yeah. They're trying to figure out the best way to space out those booster sessions, how often and for how long.
To prevent relapse.
Exactly. And some studies suggest that spacing them out more, rather than having them more frequently, might be more effective.
Interesting. So it's like giving the brain little reminders, helping it hold on to those positive changes.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And it all goes back to neuroplasticity, that amazing ability of the brain to adapt and change. By giving these periodic boosts of stimulation, we might be able to make those new neural connections more permanent.
It's like training the brain to stay healthy.
Exactly. And another exciting area of research is combining TMS with other treatments, like psychotherapy or medication.
So TMS could be part of a more holistic approach to mental health care.
Exactly. The idea is that these treatments could work together, complement each other. Like psychotherapy could help people develop coping skills and address the underlying psychological issues, while TMS could target those specific brain circuits involved in mood.
It's like tackling the problem from multiple angles.
Exactly. And this approach really acknowledges the complexity of mental health. It's not just about brain chemistry, and it's not just about psychology. It's this intricate interaction between the two.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. It seems like TMS is really changing the game when it comes to mental health care.
It is. It's moving us away from that one-size-fits-all approach and towards something much more personalized and effective.
It's about understanding the brain, not just treating the symptoms.
Exactly.
Well, this deep dive has definitely made me even more excited about the future of TMS and its potential to help so many people.
Me too. It's a really exciting field to be a part of.
I bet. But before we get too carried away with all the possibilities, I'm wondering, what are some of the challenges and unknowns that researchers are still grappling with?
Oh, there are definitely still some challenges. We still don't fully understand how TMS works on a fundamental level.
Yeah.
What's happening at the molecular and cellular level.
Right, there are still so many mysteries about the brain.
Exactly. And we need to figure out the optimal treatment protocols, the best frequencies, the best duration of treatment, things like that.
It's all about fine-tuning the approach.
Right. And then there's the question of long-term effects, like we talked about earlier. We need more research to see how long the benefits of TMS really last and what we can do to make them more durable.
And, of course, the ethical considerations.
Yeah, those are always important. We need to make sure we're using this technology responsibly, for the benefit of patients and not for any kind of enhancement or manipulation.
Absolutely. It's about healing, not about creating super brains or anything like that.
Exactly. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but I'm really optimistic about the future of TMS. I think it has the potential to revolutionize mental health care.
It's really inspiring to see how far this technology has come and where it might go.
It is. And the best part is this isn't just happening in one lab or one country. It's a global effort. There are researchers all over the world working on TMS, collaborating, sharing their findings.
That's really encouraging. It shows how important this work is, how much potential it has.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about TMS itself. It's about what it represents, the shift towards more personalized brain-based treatments for mental illness.
It's a new era of mental health care.
It really is.
It feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
I know, right?
There's so much happening in TMS research. It's hard to keep up.
It really is a rapidly evolving field.
And it's incredible to think about its potential, not just for depression, but maybe for other conditions too.
Oh, absolutely. TMS is being explored for so many different things now.
It's exciting, right?
It really is. And what's really cool is that it's a global effort. Scientists all over the world are collaborating, sharing their findings.
Look, everyone's recognizing the potential of TMS.
Yeah, it's not just a few isolated labs anymore. It's a whole community of researchers working together.
That's really inspiring. Are there any, particular research groups or institutions that are, leading the charge in TMS?
Oh, definitely. Besides Stanford, which we talked about earlier, there's the Brain Stimulation Laboratory at the National Institute of Mental Health.
They're doing some amazing work.
They are. They're running these large-scale clinical trials to really rigorously evaluate TMS for a whole range of conditions.
That's so important, to have that solid evidence base.
Absolutely. And internationally, you've got groups like the Oxford Center for Human Brain Activity in the UK.
Oxford, of course.
Right. And the Berenson Allen Center in Boston.
They're doing some really cutting-edge research.
They are. They're really pushing the boundaries of what we know about TMS and how to optimize it.
It's incredible. And I've heard that some researchers are even combining TMS with other brain stimulation techniques like TDCS.
Transcranial direct current stimulation.
Yeah, TDCS. What is that exactly?
So TDCS, it's kind of like a gentler version of TMS. Instead of magnetic pulses, it uses a very weak electrical current delivered through electrodes on the scalp.
So less intense than TMS.
Much less intense.
Yeah.
But it's super safe and really portable.
Interesting. But why combine the two? What's the thinking there?
Well, they might work synergistically, TMS can provide that strong, targeted stimulation to kind of jumpstart things.
Get those circuits firing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then TDCS can provide this more sustained, low-level modulation to kind of reinforce those changes.
It's like a 1-2 punch.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really exciting area of research.
I can imagine. And I know we talked about closed-loop TMS earlier, but I feel like we could spend a whole episode just on that.
Oh, easily. It's such a fascinating area, the idea of personalizing the TMS treatment in real time based on the brain's activity.
It's like the ultimate personalized medicine.
It really is. And with the advances in AI, artificial intelligence.
Oh, yeah. AI is everywhere these days.
It is. And it's being used to analyze the EEG data during TMS and actually guide the stimulation parameters.
So the AI is basically controlling the TMS machine.
In a way, yes. It's looking for those subtle patterns in the brainwaves and making adjustments to the TMS to optimize the treatment.
Wow, that's incredible. It sounds like something out of the future.
It does, doesn't it? But it's happening now. And these advancements, they're not just staying in research labs. They're actually making their way into clinical practice.
Really?
Yeah. More and more hospitals and clinics are starting to offer TMS as a treatment option.
That's great news. So many people could potentially benefit from this.
Exactly. And insurance coverage is expanding too, so it's becoming more accessible.
That's fantastic. It sounds like TMS is really starting to make a difference in people's lives.
It is. It's a really exciting time to be in this field.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about TMS and its potential.
Me too. It's been a great conversation.
So as we wrap up, I'm curious, what are your final thoughts on TMS and the future of mental health care?
I think TMS really represents a paradigm shift in how we approach mental health. For so long, we've been focused on treating the symptoms, but TMS is different.
It's about understanding the brain.
Exactly. It's about targeting the underlying mechanisms, those specific brain circuits that are involved in these conditions.
And harnessing the brain's natural ability to heal.
Absolutely. And that's what makes TMS so exciting. It's this recognition that the brain is incredibly plastic. It can change, it can adapt.
And we can help it along the way.
Exactly. And I think that's the future of mental health care, more personalized, brain-based treatments that are tailored to each individual's needs.
It's a future I'm excited to see unfold.
Me too.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of TMS. It's been a truly fascinating journey.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed learning about this incredible technology and its potential to transform mental health care. Until next time, stay curious.